Okay, so there's something that I've noticed every time I stop and I talk with somebody about van life. And it doesn't seem to matter how the conversation got started, whether or not the person was just curious or they were excited because they're thinking about doing it themselves. So they're excited to talk to somebody about it. Somehow, it always circles back to the same thing: fear. Hi, I'm Dominique. And if there is something in your head that has been holding you back and keeping you from getting started, let's talk about that today. Because I know that for me, there are at least a handful of fears that keep coming up in my conversations over and over again. And the first one that I want to talk about today is the what if I break down fear. I think that's obviously very logical. If we're going to be living in vehicles, more than likely we're going to have maintenance issues, right? But I think the fear is the breaking down in the middle of nowhere that really has people concerned. So I didn't personally have the luxury of time to think about this one before buying Beacon. Life just kind of threw me into this situation. But it definitely crept in when I was out on those open highways and my phone signal was coming and going. And I started thinking, what am I going to do if I break down out here and I have no phone signal? So, of course, it had to happen, right? I was on my way to Wyoming, and all of a sudden, Beacon starts overheating. And I was doing the best that I could to keep her going, but I started becoming concerned when I was passing exit sign after exit sign that said no services. I finally did get her to a little town just across the state line, one I had actually planned on stopping in. And I could see that the radiator was cracked, so I headed into a parts store. So I was ordering my replacement radiator, and of course sharing my situation, and this couple overheard me. The woman asked me if I wanted her husband to just take a second look at the radiator and confirm it needed to be replaced. She said he was a mechanic. And I thought, absolutely, because I'm going to need a mechanic anyway to put the radiator in. We went out and looked at it, and he confirmed that it definitely needed to be replaced. It wasn't repairable. And then he offered to put it in for me for free. That's pretty cool. But he offered to put it in for me for free. They wouldn't take a dime. The only thing that they asked is that I pay it forward. It's nice to know there's still some really amazing people out there. But what I really learned out of that situation was that my fear of breaking down had been worse than the breakdown itself. Another thing I learned was a couple weeks later when I started thinking about my trip on the Alaska Highway. And I realized I had been so concerned about breaking down that I didn't really explore the way that I probably would have had I still been in my SUV. When I got to Alaska, I met people that spent weeks getting there on the Alcan, just enjoying it and doing hikes and trips and all kinds of things that there is available. And I pretty much would see nothing that wasn't directly off the highway. I made the trip in 3 days, and on the way back, 4. So the fear of breaking down didn't stop me from making the trip, but I definitely think that it kept me from having the experience I could have had. Things are going to happen, but that doesn't mean that they're always going to turn into disasters. It's not exactly quiet out here, but the next one that I want to talk about is the what if I can't afford it fear. Now, this one I can see as being a legitimate concern because van life is not as cheap as people imagine it to be. And some people still have a lot of expenses outside of van life and traveling. So, what if I can't earn enough money on the road? Or what if I lose my remote job? What if something expensive happens and eats up my savings? This, this happens to people. But here's the thing I think that people often forget. Van life is flexible, which means you're moving to your own rhythm and you get to control that rhythm. So you get to control your expenses. In other words, you can decide how fast and how far you move each day, or if you decide to stay put, what you spend on for food or experiences. Maybe you decide to just stay and earn some money. I've stayed for weeks in some places and for months in others. Now, there's been a variety of reasons, but one of those reasons has been to stabilize my income. And that's the great thing about this life is I get that choice. So you can choose to just stay and earn. I think that people imagine that van life is constant motion, and it doesn't have to be. Now, that idea also brings me into the next fear that I hear a lot of. And I think this one causes anxiety before people even have their vehicle. It's the where am I going to sleep every night fear. When people think about van life, they often think that they have to find a new place to sleep every night. And some people do that, but other people like me don't. You know, like I said previously, I've stayed weeks in some spots and months in others. And I'm talking about the regular nomad friendly pre existing businesses that we use all the time. Okay, for example, if you arrive in an area and there are a lot of things that you want to do or see there, and it's going to take you some time, and you found a great spot to stay at, why would you leave? Why would you look for another spot if you don't have to? You're going to be respectful, right? You're not going to set up camp in their parking lot. You're going to leave in the morning and you'll come back late in the evening so you're not disrupting their business. And of course, if you can support the business, even if it's in just a small way, then do that. But you sort of can read the room and see if it's okay. I think a lot of people just assume that they have to leave every day or two. And I just presume that they're okay with me being there. Now, I personally have never been asked to leave, but that is not to say that other people haven't. I have heard of other people being asked to leave after so long. But the thing is, if they do, then just do so gracefully. I mean, This was time that they gave to you. It wasn't time that they owed to you. So we're appreciative of it. And we want them to know that we appreciate it. So I would just leave gracefully. There's another one that I want to talk about that I don't think is talked about enough. And that is the what if I get lonely fear. A lot of people deal with loneliness very differently. A lot of people consider different situations to be lonely. And van life can be very solitary, but it doesn't have to be lonely. There are a lot of online groups that you can be a part of and share ideas with, tips and tricks, even playing get-togethers. There are social events, and there are van life meetups. There are even caravans that you can join. For example, if you decide you want to go to a meetup and it's a week long, you can get there and choose to park your rig just a little bit further away. And by doing that, you get the solitary time that you need and you get the community time that you want. And if you look around, you'll find other people are making the adjustments that suit them. The final one that I wanted to talk about is the one that I consider to be the biggest. And it's the what if I fail fear. This seems to have a lot of people concerned. But you need to remember that if you try something new and it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that you failed. You may get out on the road and decide that you really enjoy this, but you don't want to do it full time. You want to do it part time. Or you may decide it's definitely not the life for you. It's not as fun as you thought it would be, or it's not what you expected. And you want to go back to a house or an apartment and all of the conveniences that they offer. And that's okay. There are no rules against changing your mind. I don't even know how long I'm going to be doing this. But I do think that having a soft place to land helps to change your perspective on things. And by that I mean, I think it changes your view of homelessness into houselessness. And I think it also converts fear into choice. For example, for me personally, my older sister has made it very clear that if the dogs and I suddenly need somewhere to stay, that her doors are wide open and we are more than welcome. Now, knowing that that is there helps me. I think it helps me to know I can keep going because I have somewhere to land if I can't keep going. Now, this is the same sister that also worried about me making this decision. She thought it was definitely not a good choice. But after I made it to Alaska one night, we were on a phone call, and she told me that even though she's still worried, that she was proud of me for making it and for doing what it was I wanted to do. That felt good, you know? It's kind of nice to know that the sister I grew up with, the one that I fought with over bedroom space or that considered me pretty much annoying most of the time, will now admit that she likes me enough to worry about me. You know, fear is real, but it's just really just a situation you haven't seen the other side of yet. So maybe give this a shot and give yourself a new story to tell. So if you had any fears in your head that were holding you back and keeping you from getting started, I hope that this video helped you maybe look at them in a different light. And if you have some fears that weren't listed here and you want to put them in the comments below, there may be people in the community that can help advise you on those. But also, I think it's very important that if you have fears that you have already worked through and you're willing to share those stories, that if you could put those in the comments below, that there are other people in this community that could benefit from your experience. We're all still learning here, and we can continue to learn and grow together in this life. So what are the chances that I'll see you in the next video? I hope they're good. Take care.